Chernihiv, September 20th, 2025. Early dawn. In the thick fog covering northern Ukraine, the sky seemed calm, but hidden within was a life-or-death duel between air defense technology and ballistic firepower. Near the settlement of Progress, the Ukrainian army had deployed a long-range S-300 PS air defense system. This was the main shield to protect the skies over Chernihiv and an important link in the northern defense network. The 30N6 fire control radar of the S-300 PS was mounted on a 40V6M mast nearly 40 meters high, allowing it to detect and track targets from long distances, covering a vast airspace. Around it, command vehicles and missile transporter launchers were dispersed under the forest canopy, carefully camouflaged, awaiting orders to fire. However, this very deployment soon fell under the lens of Russian UAVs. In modern warfare, UAVs have become indispensable eyes. That morning in Chernihiv, Russian reconnaissance drones circled overhead, using infrared sensors to scan the entire area. A Ukrainian officer at the site later admitted, "We detected the UAV, but the radar had to remain active. If we turned it off, it would be like opening the sky for Russian cruise missiles. We had no choice but to take the risk." That decision turned the S-300 battery into a perfect target. As soon as the UAV transmitted the coordinates, Russia launched an Iskander-M tactical ballistic missile. Traveling at hypersonic speeds of Mach 6 to 7, the missile shot into the sky, then followed a quasi-ballistic trajectory straight toward Chernihiv. Within minutes, it had covered hundreds of kilometers and entered the airspace above the S-300 site. At an altitude of about 1,000 meters, the Iskander-M's warhead separated, activating its cluster munition system. More than 54 9N730 fragmentation submunitions fanned out over an area equivalent to several football fields. As they fell, each submunition exploded at an altitude of 6 to 10 meters, turning the forested zone into a sea of fire, the shrapnel tearing apart everything in the vicinity. The strike in Chernihiv was a textbook example of the clash between technologies and doctrines. Iskander-M is Russia's pride, with its precision strike capability, hypersonic speed, and unpredictable trajectory. It can pierce through most current air defense networks, especially when paired with UAV spotters. Each missile costs tens of millions of dollars, but in return, it can wipe out an entire air defense site in a single strike. Ukraine's S-300 PS, fielded since the early 1980s, was once a cutting-edge Soviet system, comparable to the US Patriot at the time. With 5V-55R missiles capable of 75 kilometers range and a 30N6 radar mounted on an elevated mast, the S-300 PS could effectively engage aircraft and low-flying cruise missiles. However, against cheap reconnaissance drones and hypersonic ballistic missiles, its limitations were exposed. Bulky, difficult to relocate quickly, and vulnerable to being neutralized within minutes. This is the stark contrast between weapons of the last century and the warfare of the 21st century. A system worth tens of millions of dollars can be locked onto by a reconnaissance UAV costing only a few thousand, only to then be obliterated by an expensive missile. The Russian Ministry of Defense declared that the strike completely destroyed the 30N6 fire control radar, the command post, 2 launchers, and 2 support vehicles. UAV footage recorded large fires, hurried rescue efforts by Ukrainian forces, and secondary explosions indicating that remaining munitions had also been eliminated. Ukraine did not issue an official statement, but Western observers noted that if Russia's claims were accurate, this would be a heavy blow to Kyiv's northern air defense network. In the context of intensified Russian attacks using Shahed drones and cruise missiles, the loss of another S-300 system would force Ukraine to rely even more heavily on Western-supplied Patriot and HIRST systems. After a series of Russian strikes with Iskander, Caliber, and Shahed drones targeting energy infrastructure, Ukraine delivered its boldest response since the beginning of autumn. On the night of October 2 into the early hours of October 3, Kyiv's homemade long-range drones flew thousands of kilometers through Russian airspace, penetrating multiple layers of air defense to strike the Azot chemical plant in Perm Krai, a facility considered vital to both agriculture and Moscow's defense industry. The explosion echoed through the Ural night, forcing Azot's production process to halt temporarily, as Governor Dmitry Mahonin himself admitted. What was remarkable was that Perm Krai lies 1,700 kilometers from Ukraine, proving that Ukrainian UAV capability had reached deep into Russia's rear, far beyond previous predictions. If Russia's Iskander and Shahed systems regularly exert pressure through relentless strikes on Ukraine's power grid and gas plants, Ukraine has chosen another path: precision attacks on facilities that feed Russia's war machine. The Azot plant does not just produce fertilizers for agriculture, it also supplies chemicals such as ammonia, urea, and ammonium nitrate, all essential for the manufacture of explosives and propellants. In 2024, Azot reached a record output of 2.3 million tons, a significant portion of which fed into Russia's munitions and missile production chain. According to British media, the 5 largest Russian chemical companies, including Azot, have provided over 75% of the raw materials for explosives production since the conflict began. Thus, when Ukrainian UAVs forced this plant to stop operations, the impact went beyond a few hours of disruption. It was a warning shot that Russia's defense industry could be pierced right at its heartland. The Russian Ministry of Defense quickly announced that 20 UAVs had been shot down that night, but made no mention of the incident in Perm. This familiar refrain, acknowledging UAV presence while denying damage, only highlighted the uncomfortable truth. Russia's supposedly impenetrable deep-layered air defense is revealing dangerous depths. In recent months, Ukraine has escalated UAV strikes against oil refineries, fuel depots, and now chemical plants, a deep-cut strategy aimed at Russia's war infrastructure. If each drone costs only tens of thousands of dollars, but can force a multi-billion-dollar facility to shut down, then Kyiv is exploiting a war of attrition to its fullest. The Azot strike was not just an explosion in the night, it was a clear response. Ukraine can take the war anywhere inside Russia, from Krasnodar to Perm, from the front lines to the Asian hinterlands. This was a message not only to Moscow, but to the international community. Ukraine is no longer a passive defender, but has risen to active retaliation, ready to strike at the very arteries of its opponent's war effort. And when Russia's rear is shaken, its front lines cannot remain secure. Comparing both sides, Russia gained an immediate advantage by eliminating a Ukrainian S-300 system, but only by spending a costly strategic weapon. Meanwhile, Ukraine, with inexpensive drones, managed to disrupt a critical Russian facility. One side drains its strategic missile arsenal, while the other demonstrates the strength of asymmetric warfare. Low cost, high impact. These two strikes show that the war is no longer confined to Donetsk, Kharkiv, or Zaporizhia, but has expanded into a contest of technology, deep strategy, and political messaging to the entire world. Thank you for following this report. If you found these analyses useful, please leave a comment and share, so we have more motivation to continue bringing you the most pressing and authentic stories from the battlefield.